Americans fought for them. The CCP, relying on the U.S. to be the peacemaker between the party and the ruling nationalists, spared no effort to take advantage of the pro-American sentiment. And in doing so, prevented its own destruction. On July 3rd, 1943, the day before America's Independence Day, CCP mouthpiece Xinhua Daily published an editorial in a tone that would shock most communists today. Since a young age, we have thought of the U.S. as a lovable country. The Chinese people hold good impressions of the U.S. based on the democratic and open-minded character of its people. Just a few years later, Chinese communist soldiers were killing American troops in the Korean War. It was June 1950. The CCP, having taken over mainland China, painted Americans as the most evil imperialists in the world. To eliminate pro-US sentiment in China after World War II, the Communist Party launched a massive propaganda campaign, teaching the Chinese people to, quote, hate, despise, and look down on the United States.
Generation, and went back to China, we had dinner together. And she asked me, why you American always want to defeat us? I said, no such thing. America never tried to destroy China. There's no such thing. She said, no, you are brainwashed by the American government. So I just realized, because we live in the different worlds.
America went from a democratic, civilized, and friendly nation to the world's most counter-revolutionary, barbaric, and aggressive imperialist country, and the sworn enemy of the Chinese people.
I speak out against this war because I'm disappointed with America.
Americans remember the anti-war campaign, but who was on the other side of the Vietnam War? The Vietnamese were just cannon fodder, and the Chinese Communist Party encouraged and supported the war. It was Mao Zedong who took 60% of China's revenue and forced the northern Vietnamese to fight the southern Vietnamese. And for what? To defeat American imperialism.
The Chinese regime's long drawn-out plans against America, an ultimate plan for world domination. This is nothing new to the U.S. intelligence community. In his 2014 book, The 100-Year Marathon, former U.S. Defense Department senior official Michael Pillsbury revealed the following stories. In 1964, Soviet KGB spy Yuri Nisenko defected to the United States, bringing with him some of the most important intelligence about China. He reported that Mao sought dominance not only of the international communist system, but also the entire world order.
The real story was when I was 24 years old at the United Nations headquarters in the Secretariat. What the Russians there told me confirmed what Nosenko had said, but they went even further. They said China has a grand plan that first they've squeezed the Soviet Union of everything they could get in terms of technology and investment, factories and so forth. Now they're going to switch over to you Americans, but at the time nobody believed this Russian warning.
He told Pillsbury the Soviet leadership hated and feared the Chinese, believing that China was planning to take control of the communist world and eventually assert global dominance.
The Chinese Communist Party, by its nature, was pro-communist, pro-Stalinist, and pro-Soviet. But Mao Zedong wanted more than that. He had huge ambitions to dominate the world and to be the leader of the world communist system. And he fell out with the Soviet Union when fighting for that leadership.
Beijing's olive branch to the United States was unprecedented, and it came at a good time. The U.S. government was busy containing threats from the Soviet Union. In comparison, threats from communist China seemed trivial. The United States and China became allies against the Soviet Union.
At that time, Nixon made the decision to say that if the Soviet Union attacked China, the U.S. would have to step in and attack the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was forced to pull back. Then Mao Zedong realized that he would be dead, so he was forced to be more pro-America. That's not the same as saying that he loved America in his heart, loved democracy. There was no such thing.
Among the leaders after Mao, one man was arguably the most deceitful: Deng Xiaoping.
Chinese leave today with their memories and perhaps a new image for Communist China's leading man. For Deng Xiaoping not only went west, but went western.
This is how Deng phrased U.S.-China relations. China is not important to the world because China is still very poor and has limited power. If we want to confront the Soviet Union, we have to depend on the United States. Deng's foreign policy in a nutshell: hide your strength and bide your time. U.S. policymakers were thrilled at the idea that one day China would become a free market economy, or even better, a liberal democracy. America started sharing valuable resources with China: technology, investment, education, military goods, and even intelligence. In the case of the media, from 1976 to 1997, when Deng passed away, he was featured at least 7 times on the cover of Time magazine, fueled by America's excitement for this new Chinese leader.
Deng Xiaoping made it very, very clear. We would never follow the American way. No constitutional system, no political reform.
But Deng Xiaoping saw something else. For him, the Soviet Union didn't fall apart because of the communist system. It fell apart because of foreign adversaries.
This interview were further promoting the friendship and the mutual understanding between our two peoples.
You admire America.
That's right.
Jiang isn't just a successor of Deng, but also of his strategic principle: hiding your strength and biding your time. Be it the economy, technology, or international status, the Chinese regime once again needed the U.S. to give it a hand. Jiang fiercely attacked those who sought democratic reforms in China and fanned up anti-U.S. sentiment across the country. September 11, 2001. When the American people were grieving their loss, some Chinese netizens, brainwashed by the party, cheered for America's suffering. In the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square massacre, Deng, worried he would eventually pay for his killings, laid his eyes on Jiang as a successor. The reason? Jiang was among those who had ordered the troops to open fire. As the biggest political beneficiary of the massacre, Jiang pushed China to its darkest era of human rights. He also embodied the dual nature of Beijing's foreign policy to its fullest extent, appearing pro-American on the outside and anti-American on the inside. Things started to change in 2012 when Xi Jinping took power. Narratives like this started to make headlines in Chinese state media, even making their way into Western mainstream media and scholarly works. CCP has entered a new stage to challenge the existing world order. Beijing realized it was time to phase out the old strategy. There was no need for hiding your strength and biding your time anymore. Instead, we're starting to hear phrases like, realize the Chinese dream. This is the opening of Silent Contest, a propaganda film produced by the CCP's People's Liberation Army in 2013. The message was shocking.
China's great ascension will always go hand in hand with our fight against American hegemony. This is a 100-year battle that won't be swayed by human will.
Welcome to another Wednesday Night Live, folks. We're back again. I hope you enjoyed the intro. That was clipped from the documentary The Final War. China's the 100-year plot to defeat America, where Joshua Phillip, who you all know I am a huge fan of, over at the Epoch Times, had put this together. If you don't know who Joshua Phillip is, obviously you could look him up, but he was the one who came out with the Wuhan lab documentary in April 2020. All right. So these guys, Epic Times, followed China like nobody's business. And I'm going to get into a little bit more about this brainwash strategy that they've been using for 100 years, or that they plan to win in after 100 years. That 100 years began in 1949 with the inception of the Chinese Communist Party. So I'll get into that a little bit more as well. We're going to get into the Trump indictment as well. I was kind of shocked that they actually went and had him appear in front of a court, in front of a judge, and it did kind of change my mind on some things, and really did kind of, I think, bring me into, I was a bigger DeSantis guy before, but now I think this kind of pushed me back over to the Trump side, because I guess the thing for me is, if they're, and it's not like they're two opposing sides, right? Like, let's not get crazy, but at the same time, I think the fact that they hate this man this much is that they're not going to stop. And we kind of knew this, but in essence, what this did teach us about the scenario, what it taught me, which is a positive sign, is that even if they did have something going on for elections or whatever, clearly they're worried about the 2024 election. Clearly they're worried about it. So even if you're one of those people who believes, and here we go, I just got back on YouTube now. Welcome back, YouTube folks, even though there's probably only one or two, because YouTube never tells anyone that I've gone live, nor does it ever distribute my content. But but when it comes down to it, when you look at that scenario, if they really thought they had the election wrapped up, there would not be a need to attack this man at the level that they're attacking him. So that should give promise of hope. That should give promise of hope for everybody. And the cool life here over on Twitch. How are you, Cool Life? Said 1949. I was thinking more like 1980s or 90s. No, 1949. All right. So and I would encourage everyone to go watch. 1949 is when the CCP was formed. That's when they took over and beat the Nationalist Party in China. And they are documented at that time, actually earlier than that, as saying that it would be a long, slow 100-year battle, but they will defeat the United States of America. And it fits right with the timeline, though, does it not? I mean, in the end, when you look at it, right, Ayn Rand was writing Atlas Shrugged around that time, because she was seeing the people in the streets, the Labor Party type of deal, talking about labor. She was seeing the very early stages of communism trying to win over the hearts and minds of Americans. And it was not long after that, throughout the 1950s, where the colleges began to get infiltrated, and they started preaching the Marxist philosophies on college campuses, which then gave us the hippies, who thought that they were revolutionary, but in essence, they were just the first of a long line of brainwashed Americans who have been taught, who have been miseducated, I should say, to hate their country. And that's, and it's slowly, there was some pushback in the 80s, right? That's kind of how Reagan got in, but he was the result, basically, of people pushing back against that mentality, and the shining city on a hill, like, people were yearning for the days of loving their country again, and Reagan brought that back to him for a good decade. But in the end, the CCP never stopped. Even throughout the 80s, they did not stop. They were controlling, between them, the Soviets, the WEF, like, all of these folks were out there, okay? And China was not in a great power position back then. It was the Soviets who were in the power position. But come the fall of the Soviet Union, China just picked up the ball and ran with it. But the entire time, all right, Vietnam War, right, 60% of China's net worth went towards keeping that war going. Went towards first went towards starting it by getting Ho Chi Minh and et cetera and company to start the war with the South Koreans, but then he kept fueling it. All right, they kept fueling it behind the scenes, and you learn a lot in this documentary from actual source material. I knew a lot about the story anyway, but even I learned quite a bit from watching it. It's on Epoch TV. You probably will have to subscribe to Epoch Times, but I will tell you, it's worth it. It's not expensive, and it's worth it. Their reporting on the CCP is absolutely phenomenal. So, and their documentaries are impeccable. Farmageddon was another great one. The Shadow Government is another great one. These guys are true blue investigative journalists, and they should get the love that they deserve. And I can tell you, even if you just bought in just to see this documentary, it's 2.5 hours long. I only clipped, it was painstaking to clip 10 minutes of that, but to know how much they've infiltrated our society on every level, all right, on every level. And it's at the point now where it explains almost everything. And to be truthful with you, I did a lot of commentary on WEF and how the WEF was doing this, how the WEF was doing that. But in the end, it's not the WEF, it's China, it's the CCP. The CCP owns the UN, all right? They control the UN. The UN controls the WEF, WHO, all of it, all right? This is all I'm convinced at this point until facts emerge that prove differently. But the idea that it would be like the Rothschilds behind this or something like that, like the Rothschilds just have money. It doesn't matter that they have an immense amount of money. It's still just money. And money only brings so much power. It brings power, but only so much. It does not bring the type of power that someone like Xi Jinping and the CCP are looking for. All right. It just doesn't bring that type of power. Now, that being said, I guess the theme of why I brought this up now is and I'm going to get into this after I'm done talking about Trump for a little bit. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up with it was the fear factor. And, I was having a conversation with some family members. I was having a conversation with a couple of cousins and my brother, and a lot that my cousins were giving me. Even my brother at times would be like, it's over. It doesn't matter. The election doesn't matter. And I'm kind of like, I'm thinking about it in a way, I guess, where I'm thinking, and my cousins were like, well, we're just locked and loaded and ready. And it's like, whoa. And I'm saying, everybody, and they're not alone. I hear this all the time. Like, people just threw their hands up, and they pretty much are saying this is going to come down to some kind of revolutionary war. And it's like bugging me out, because I'm like, we're not done using the Constitution yet, number one. All right. And that's where my Article 5 advocacy comes in. And then number two, what do we got here? We got the Democratic Party wants Trump to shut the hell up and wants to get another Democratic president. Yeah, of course they do. Of course they do. And that's, that's a big thing for them, right? Obviously, they didn't expect Trump to come in the first place. A lot of this stuff has gone haywire since, because they've been rushing things that they planned on taking a little more time with. But in the end, it's, in the end, China has made great advances. All right. But here's the hope that and it's not hope. I think it's reality. All right. China's not a very powerful country, and they're a parasite. All right. So you have to keep in mind the amount of media that they've infiltrated. All right. Across the globe, not just in the United States, across the globe. Okay. This narrative of, China's coming to power, it's China's time. I even had heard Kim Iverson. I left some rough comments on one of her videos where she gave this obvious communist Marxist dude the microphone and then started it off as if it was like an overstatement to say he was a communist Marxist. And the guy went on to just preach communism and Marxism and literally preach the CCP message of it's over. We just need to, now the strategy needs to be, how do we work with this new superpower? And, blah, blah. And I'm just like, whoa. And here's the thing, right? Here are some facts about China. Number one, their population is declining at an immensely rapid rate. All right. Again, not widely reported because they're pulling the strings on pretty much all major media. But in 2050, their population is expected to be cut in half. So unless they're going to send an army of geriatrics out there, they're not the military force that they want everybody to believe. All right, that's number one. Now, number two, they're a parasite. They don't innovate anything they never have. They have stolen every single piece of technology they have, and they will continue to steal technology. Why? Because communism doesn't allow for innovation. It just doesn't. And the Soviets were a perfect example of this. Alexander Solzhenitsyn talks about in A Warning to the West. He talks about specifically how American companies and how they were exploiting America, with American companies in our desire for money would go there, and they did this immense like spy tech exposition. And then after being there for a couple of days, realized this might not be a good idea, packed up their stuff and left, but it was too late. They had already gotten all the information they needed. They reverse engineered these wiretap technologies and other stuff and quickly began using it on their own people. All right. But the reason they have that technology is because they stole it. All right. And that's always the situation. There is no innovation in communism because nobody is working for their own good. So there's no incentive. The only way they innovate anything is at the barrel of a gun, is at the point of a gun. All right. And so China's no different. And throughout history, from 1949 to now, they have leaned on the United States over and over and over again. They leaned on us with Nixon to protect them from the Soviets because they were having a falling out with the Soviets. So they leaned on Nixon to get them out of it. They did the same thing. Later on. All they do, okay, when they realized that their economy was going to crumble, they sort of privatized things. And then what did they do? They came to the United States hands out, talking about how poor they were and how not a threat and this and that. And their mantra of hide your strength, bide your time was just rolling right along. All right. And so, yeah, is all of this stuff scary that they got to the point that they're at now, that they fulfilled, a lot of what they intended to fulfill, that things for them at least look like they're going on pace? Yeah, I guess that's kind of creepy. But at the same time, we were sleepwalking through this whole process. And the reason they were able to get to where they got to is because we were sleepwalking. Pick your generation, going all the way back to the hippies. Pick your generation. All right. Because it doesn't matter. We all lived through the removal of civics from classrooms, replaced with social studies. I'm 49 years old. I didn't learn civics. I learned social studies. Right. And we didn't think anything of it. All this nonsense about social justice and all this. These are all things that we were warned about. Alexander Solzhenitsyn straight up said, in like to the T, like using the terms, be wary of people looking for finer shades of equality and social justice. They're trying to destroy your magnificent country. I mean, it's exactly what he said. This was in the 70s. They knew. And now we're in a situation where we're all confused. I'm going to play a clip from my man Yuri just to highlight, the fact that they've been trying to tell us. The defectors have been trying to tell us. And the Soviet defectors back then were telling our intelligence agencies that they were concerned about China because they didn't just want to rule their country with communism. They wanted to rule communism. And so the Soviets were concerned. And that's when China first gave an olive branch out to the United States to be like, hey, if they come after us, you got our back, right? And we were dumb enough to say yes. But let me try and let me grab this clip. So here's one from Yuri where he's just explaining to us basically how what he's explaining here is what ideological subversion is. So what the process is that they were undergoing. And at that time, when Yuri was around, it was still Russia and the Soviets who were leading the way on this charge. However, with plenty of help from the WEF and China, right? But here's how he explains what it is quickly.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
All right. And that's it. It's the entire idea behind this whole thing. All right, is to confuse the crap out of everyone and make everyone unsure how to even go about defending their own country and defending their own beliefs. All right, to throw so much garbage out there, and it's evolved so much now that we're into this bizarre transgender nonsense where you've got a group that's like 0.6% of the population was a classified disorder in gender identity disorder, removed it from the APA books and replaced it with the symptoms, and just went around acting like it's perfectly normal, until the point where they now have, there are some young adults now who are raising their children and mutilating them. This is how powerful the psyop can be. All right. And so where does that leave us, though? Because 2020 opened a lot of eyes, and really, 2020, whether it was capitalized on or intentional, and I think most people believe it was capitalized on, where here comes this pandemic, China saw the opportunity and just started doing what they do, right? And it started to exploit the opportunity, because that's what evil empires do. And so they went about exploiting it. The beauty of it, though, is that our eyes got opened. Right? We got to look into the classroom. We now know, right? We now know what was going on in the classrooms, and now are calling it out. These teachers, the wackadoos, the doo-doo ones, right? There's a lot of good teachers out there, but the doo-doo ones were going ahead and they were getting away with pumping this garbage, because in the end, there was nobody knew they were doing it. Parents were at home telling their kids to trust their teachers, and listen to your teachers, and your teachers are right. And then their teachers, at least some of them, right? Those doo-doos, the ones you see on what is it, TikTok, libs of TikTok, like they got a nice compilation of these people talking about it. Your kid gets stuck in a classroom with one of them doo-doos. There's nothing to you're over here telling them, no, listen to your teacher. Make sure your teacher's always right. Make sure you listen to your teacher. And then for years, people are doing this, and the teachers are telling them, you know more than your parents do. Your parents learned that fake history. We're going to teach you that real history. And that's the kids. And then they tell them, your parents, they don't know any better. You need to just keep this between us. And what do? They prep the kids' minds so that when the parent does finally find out how dumb the kid is historically, and they try to correct it, the kid's attitude is, they told me you would be this way. And the kids become defiant and insist, as they're locked into that mass formation, they insist that they're right. And so they go on the rest of their lives just being stupid. And that's all good. That's all good for the CCP. They love all that. They love all that. The bad diets, all that stuff, all of that is a part of the ideological subversion piece. All of it. People getting out of shape, people fat and lazy, want everything for free, because that's what communism promises, right? So when you get everybody in a mode where they want everything for free, then when you come in with your swooping brilliance of how you can give them everything for free, it sounds attractive. And we got a young generation right now who thinks that that's very attractive. They all went to college and wasted their time in gender studies classes and can't figure out why they're not rich. That's where they're at. And it's just stunning to me that we, allowed these things to happen. And now, here comes Donald Trump, right? And Donald Trump comes in 2016. This was the first time a U.S. president really took it to China. And to Trump's credit, he was talking about doing stuff like this back in the 80s. So, I mean, Trump was in interviews in the 80s talking about how China, and at the time it was Japan too, how, they're just getting these imbalanced trade deals with us. They're exploiting us. They're getting this and that. And it needs to be corrected. Like, he's been onto this for a very, very long time. And so, to his credit, when he came in, even I was a critic of the trade war, but he went ahead and did it anyway. And you know what? He went ahead and did it, and he won it. He was kicking their butt with it, and he was kicking their butt with it because he went in fearless, and that's kind of the theme that I'm trying to bring here. So over on Twitch, Cool Life, their military is not proven like Americans they've stolen technology, but who's to say it actually works? America's equipment is the most battle tested. Yeah, well, most of the tech that they steal works because that's why they steal it, right? So but they're not superior in any way. But they are aggressively building their military. So if nothing is done, then one day they will be. But but in the end, they're not trying to do conventional war with the United States. They're not trying to even go down that road. So but will they go into Taiwan? I don't know. I think so. I think right now the positioning is they get off the U.S. dollar. And for a while I thought it was an enemy of my enemy is my friend situation between Klaus and the WEF working with China as China continues to try and buy gold, and Russia's buying, BRICS countries are buying gold, and then the US is doing nothing. And it looked to me like and the U.S. is not doing nothing. We're actually printing more money, causing more inflation, and crashing crypto banks to clear the way for CBDC, which is something that China wants. And so I thought this was all just dual goals. Like they both had the same. They both wanted the U.S. dollar to fall for their own reasons, so they allowed themselves to work together. But in the end, that's not really what happened. What really happened, is this whole thing just came down from China down. And the WEF is just preaching their climate nonsense and all that. All of this rolls up to the CCP and their 100-year war. All of it. I'm convinced at this point that this is true. And my focus, it's not that I don't think Klaus is just as creepy as I did yesterday. But when you think about it, even, is he not like the friggin'... Is it not like he was cast into a Hollywood movie? I mean, really, old white guy, German accent, thick German accent. Like, is this guy not an 80s villain? Like, he totally is. And in the end, it just opened my eyes watching that documentary. Even though a lot of it I knew the history of already, there was a lot of insight in there that I didn't know, and things that blew me away. And like, 'cause you kind of know the story, that they've been at this for a long time. The 100-year war is not a new concept. However, them being so vocal about it, even before, even in like 1948, was kind of shocking to me. Like, I didn't think, I thought this was something that developed over time, but it did not. They were this way from day one. And so, it's just something. It's just something that we all have to be aware of, but we don't need to fear. Now, as far as them indicting Trump, what does that mean? Well, my brother's attitude was beforehand, he was giving me grief because I was going pro DeSantis, and he was pro Trump, and we're both pro the other way around as well. As you all know, we're all in the same gang here. But I was leaning towards DeSantis because of the obvious. I wanted Trump without Trump. Right? I wanted Trump without the tweets, without the madness and the circus and the poop show that follows him. And I think that's where DeSantis's appeal comes from. But after watching them do this, when they really have nothing to even bring them in on, and they're trying to make felony charges out of what are clearly misdemeanor charges, and just like, normally a DA would never bring somebody in a sane world. A DA would never bring somebody up on charges if that person was if they didn't know that their charges were solid. If they didn't know that they were going to get a conviction, they would not bring the charges. They wouldn't do it. But those days have passed. These Soro DAs are something else. They don't care. The judges that are something else. They get overturned all the time. They don't care. They used to be a black eye. Now they don't care. So and this kind of gets to my point with the fear as well, because a lot of people throw in the towel and say, look, man, they own the DAs, they own the judges, they own this, they own it. And I'm like, they don't own everybody. And this is why the focus that I try to preach is on the local legislators, because there's strength in numbers. And in the end, you can't bribe everybody. You just can't. I'm sorry. You can't. And when it comes down to it, like my brother threw at me, the judges are all in the tank. Look what's going on in Arizona. I said, yeah, okay. But look what went on. Look what goes on with the Second Amendment everywhere. All these attacks on the Second Amendment, but these are all judges shooting it down. They're all judges. All these attacks on the Second Amendment have been getting shot down. Every one of them. Every one of these state laws that are ridiculous have been getting shot down. Now, there clearly needs to be something to address the fact that they're playing this game, that after it gets shot down, they reword the law that do this pretty much the same thing and then force it to go back through the system again. So the Supreme Court's going to have to deal with that at some point. But nonetheless, every time it goes to court, it gets shot down. It was a San Diego court, my goodness, in the heart of California, that shot down the magazine limit law. I mean, there are good people out there. There are good people all over this country in all kinds of positions. And honestly, everybody's just afraid. And that's where mentally everyone is. They're just afraid. Where the judges don't want to speak up. They'll make decisions that are correct, the good ones, but they don't want to speak up. All the different levels. All right. They know that it's just like, like the good teachers work in a school, and they know that they got one of these Fruit Loops in there, these coconuts that are doing all of these friggin' crazy classes, CRT, whatever, DIE, now a DEI. They see this stuff going on. They know it's wrong, but they're afraid. They're afraid for their own career. They're afraid, to be ridiculed. We see a man walk into the women's bathroom. That's not okay. But people will let it happen in a lot of cases because they're afraid. They don't want to get ostracized. They don't want to get excluded. They don't want to get pointed out. Like, we need to end that. Like, fear on all levels needs to go away, and sanity needs to come back. It's like Yuri was saying when he's saying, it's designed to confuse you. It's designed to put you in a position where you don't know how to react, where you don't know, should I want to do this, but I don't want this to happen. And like, it's time to say F it. It really is. It's time to do it. And this is why, and the same thing, by the way, is happening with Article 5. Okay. The same thing is happening with Article 5. What do? They use fear tactics. They go ahead and, if we exercise our constitutional rights and our constitutional power, it's going to go haywire. You can't trust anyone. The deep state is going to come in and take everything over. And like, folks, if we're at a point where we're like that, where every time it's time to take action in any other way than voting, which has been a useless exercise in futility for virtually the entire time that we've done this. All right. Can you please tell me, even Trump, all right, let's say Trump was the best one or the closest one to do what we wanted him to do. The reality of the matter is the deficit spending was still ridiculous. The debt still astronomically increased. Like, all the major issues, he's never going to implement term limits, right? He did help the border, right? The border situation was better. There are some things that a president can do, but there's no president that's going to be a savior. The only savior that we have is us. The only savior that's going to be able to dig us out of this hole is us. We are the adult in the room. We created the federal government. The federal government is a child of the states. And in the end, we've let that child run around the house. We've let it play ball in the house. And now it broke mom's vase and nobody cares. And letting it run around. It's about time we grab the kid, drop a spanking on him, and send him up to his room. And the only way to do this, because the federal government's power has gotten to where it is today, not because they're violating the Constitution, because they're not violating the Constitution. And everybody says that like it's such a given, but they're not. They're not. Because they're following this. Oh, that came out way too big. So I'm going to have to fix that. But this right here is a very, very hard zoom of the annotated version of the Constitution of the United States. It's a good, 3,000 pages at this point. All right. And it includes every Supreme Court decision that has ever been made constitutionally. All right. And that is what the legislators and lawmakers and courts go from. Okay. That's where they find their precedent. That's where they find everything. And the bottom line is, over the last century or so, they have made some horrifically bad decisions. And those decisions, a good example is expanding the Commerce Clause to mean just about whatever the hell Congress wants it to mean, giving them jurisdiction over virtually every penny that changes hands in the economy. Their ability to tax is completely uncontrolled. Everything is completely uncontrolled. And this is all because the courts have just generally let it go. Well, you know what? The Supreme Court, you might think, well, that's the final word. It's not the final word. That's not how this republic works. We, the people, are the final word. And there is a way to overturn a Supreme Court decision or a series of horrific Supreme Court decisions and bring clarity back to the waters that they have muddied. And you can do that through constitutional amendment. Period. Not to mention, there's a couple of amendments out there that I'd like to see addressed, namely the 16th and 17th, because another power grab was the 17th Amendment, where states absolutely ceded power to the federal government by allowing this to happen, by ratifying an amendment that took the Senate out of their hands and allowed the Senate to be elected in general elections. There's a reason why the Senate was not elected directly, and it was a damn good one. Because the people that are elected directly were the local people. All the higher-ups are beholden to those local people. So if I'm angry, so when Mitt Romney decides to go rogue, or Liz Cheney decides to become a freaking flippin' maniac liberal, I can go to my local congressperson who's accessible, my state congressperson, and I can petition to have that man removed or that woman removed. And if enough people are pissed off and they're going it only takes a few hundred people to sway a local representative in one of these districts. Some of these districts are incredibly small. And you demand that person gets removed, they pull them. And they put somebody else in. Well, federal government doesn't like that. That's not up their alley. You can't manipulate someone if the states could just pull them out. So they duped everyone into thinking that this was a great play for freedom, and got this amendment passed. That needs to go. 16th Amendment income tax. Again, something they tried to get in. The courts would never allow it for years and years. They had spurts of it during the Civil War, but as soon as the war ended, it ended like that. But they couldn't get it done. So what did they do? They waited for the decades. They waited for the climate to be perfect, and they went ahead and they they passed the amendment. And they did it under the threat of do this or we're gonna impose massive tariffs. Let me see what we got here in the comments. Says half the damn people nowadays don't know the Constitution. That's absolutely correct. Half the people, more than half, do not know the Constitution. And that takes us back to the China comments. That's the point. Those were victories in the 100-Year War that they are still waging. And many of us still don't even know we're fighting. But removing civics from the classroom was not an accident. If you're going to teach people to hate their country, then you can't teach them the things that make the country great. You just can't do that. So you remove it and you turn it into social studies. You notice this, social that? Because this is what they can manipulate, right? It's like ESG scores, environmental, social, and governance, that they're holding all these major corporations beholden to. Well, environment's pretty simple, but social and governance, those are both completely subjective and can be changed at any time, and are nothing more than tools for the government to be able to control these corporations. They are slyly, and they've been slowly regulating their way to complete control of the economy, and they've been destroying it and screwing up the job the entire way. The wreckage that they leave the entire way down the road is just insurmountable. It's insurmountable as long as we stay on this same path. And the question's going to be, do we? Let me just give a quick look over to Rumble here. Shout out to the folks over at Rumble. You certainly, if you're on Rumble, I never get comments from the guys on Rumble. Just so you know, you guys may be used to me not to the viewers not being able to post your comments onto the screen, but I can give you a shout out. I have you open here to be able to shout you out should need be. So definitely feel free to leave comments. I would love to see you guys engage with the conversation as well. But just to get back on the fear topic, though, like here's the thing, right? So we explain to people what Article 5 is. I've done plenty of videos on it, how we can call a convention of states. The delegates will go. The only difference between a convention of states and the traditional method of proposing amendment of passing amendments is who proposes them, Congress or the states. That's the only difference. But once again, fear tactics come out and people get scared out of using their constitutional powers. Folks, there's no other way. I don't know how else. They shadow ban this channel, all right, on multiple, with the exception of Rumble, all right. And Rumble, we're trying to grow the following, and now I'm a little late to the game with that. But I mean, the reality of the matter is there might be 20 people who get a notification when I go live. 20 people who get a notification. I got 15,000, almost 16,000 followers on Facebook. If I'm lucky, there'll be 20 people who get a notification. All right. And if you're not getting notifications and you just stumbled upon us, go back to the follow button, because following doesn't give you all notifications. Following leaves it up to Facebook to what they think they want to give you. If you follow and then you click receive all notifications, you have to manually do it, where they're going to manipulate what you get to see and what you don't. So if they don't like a topic, like this video is probably not, just from the title alone, all right, just the fact that CCP is in the title, that alone might get me banned from YouTube again. I had to wait extra time on YouTube because I had 2 strikes on the channel, and any slip up, and you never know what the hell they're going to interpret as a violation of their policy. Any slip up would have knocked the whole channel off. So if you do watch this on YouTube, follow the Rumble channel. I left the link in the description. Follow the Rumble channel, because I can tell you right now, if they do ban me again, it's going to be like 3 months before I come back on YouTube. Easily. Because, or at least 2 months, because it's only been a month on my other strike. So I'll be sitting with 2 strikes for 2 months. I won't put anything up while that's the case, because in the end, I don't want them. I've put up enough content on YouTube already that I don't want it all going away and leaving the stratosphere because because some 20-year-old got triggered in their little room there. Banning TikTok, even though I like TikTok, I support it, but there are so many more Chinese apps that we use daily that we need to ban TikTok. Just should be the start of it. Yeah, look, I did that piece. We talked about, I believe it was last week, if not the week before, this Restrict Act that they're coming out with on TikTok. Oh, they say it's about TikTok, but it's really a slippery slope that I don't want to go down. And in the end, like, they need to just regulate these damn apps, because you start giving the federal government this kind of power. Like, what they wrote in that Restrict Act was just wild. I mean, they're basically leaving the Secretary of Commerce solely able, in his unreviewable discretion, is what it said in the actual bill. All right, unreviewable discretion. He and the DNI are able to just come to these conclusions on who's a threat and who's not, and then start taking action by seizing property and doing all kinds of creepy stuff. And the types of tech that they put in there, I mean, they were talking backhaul for cell towers. I mean, they were talking everything, like anything that could ever even reasonably be used to communicate with anyone in any way. I mean, it's like if you're talking on a paper cup and a string, they're sitting there like, wait a minute, how long have you had that string? Where was that string made? It's like wild. It's wild, the amount of power they're taking. So I'm not particularly cool with that. I'll just as soon throw my smartphone away than if they can't get it together. I'll just as soon throw my smartphone away. Like, there's no way that these companies cannot get their acts together to know which companies are owning apps or involved with the chain of ownership of an app that are beholden to the CCP. Any app that has a company that rests in China is beholden to the CCP, and your information will be data mined. And it's not like how many dog videos you watched. Like, they're taking key serial identification information off of your phone. One case example, they were able to retract information off of your clipboard. So when you copy something, it stays on a clipboard even when you paste it. How many times did you copy a password and paste it in or something like that? You don't want these dootaroos in your phone. You don't want them there. And TikTok, frankly speaking, you can't watch dog videos somewhere else? Seriously? It's a useless friggin' application. It does nothing that is not being done on 10 other platforms. But it was made incredibly popular because it had a purpose. And that's real talk. And as always, they're not going for adults. They're going for your kids. They will always be coming for your kids. Even after we call this convention and we set the standard, and we now can threaten convention whenever we want because all the fear mongers have been put to bed. Even after all that, 100 years from now, they'll still be coming after your kids, because you can't get adults to believe this nonsense. You can't make a commie out of an adult. It has to be a kid. Unless that adult is mentally broken, you cannot make a communist, or at least a significant number enough to make a movement out of an adult. You need to raise them from childhood. And this is why they went after the schools. This is why Klaus Schwab says clearly, we're bringing 10 to 20,000 of the leading thinkers, all under the age of 30. Like, he says it straight out. As a matter of fact, just to give you, it's a pain when you got to produce. And, I want to be able to just yell at someone and be like, hey, hit it. But check this out.
That's the reason why I'm so keen to provide also a forward-looking dimension to this Great Reset initiative by integrating the 10,000 global shapers, leaders between 20 and 30 years old.
Between 20 and 30 years old. That's that nice, ripe, manipulable age where if you just give them a little clout, give them a little direction, right? Because you're in that 20 to 30 range. You're wondering what you're going to do for a living. You're wondering how are you going to make it? What's your calling? How are you going to get settled, right? And then they swoop in. Hey, we got a high-end job for you. We got this for you. We got that for you. You'll have status. You'll be special. We'll give you hugs. Right? And friggin', and it sounds so appealing that these kids go in and they go all in. right? Because you didn't know yesterday, you didn't know what you were going to be doing for your living. Now you're making 150 grand. You got a nice suit. You're walking into this really big fancy building to go to work like you're a superstar. So if that means that I got to believe, if that means that I have to believe that men should be playing on women's basketball teams, so what? Rock on. Let's go, boys or women, right? Let's do it. If that means that I can no longer define what a woman is, so what? So what? Look at all the stuff I got. And it's all courtesy of communism and Marxism, is what they'll be told. And they'll take it 100% of the time. Because they don't even know that they don't even understand what's going on. They don't even understand it. Just like my generation that didn't understand. I mean, when I tell people, when I explain to people how we were mind screwed too, they can't even wrap their head around it. They think I'm crazy. I'm like, really? Because all this satanic stuff that's going on today, you think that that's all new? Do I have to remind people about Black Sabbath? Do I have to remind people about Motley Crue's "Shout at the Devil" and friggin', Twisted Sister, Burn in Hell? I mean, it goes on. I could do this for days. I could do this for days. The only musics and movie types that were immune to this kind of stuff were brand new ones, and even then, it was only in their early days. It wasn't long before they got hold of hip hop and turned that into some poisonous smacking babies that they christen and garbage. It wasn't long before the producers got hold of it and started pumping it out. And again, you promise these people fortune and fame, and they will do anything. Their souls have been sold, and they were happy to sell them. They were happy to sell them. As far as they're concerned, their souls weren't worth anything anyway. So they took the money and they went ahead and poisoned the world. And they're still poisoning it. They're still poisoning it. And I got Twitch is like the bump and comment section today. I'm not getting much out of YouTube. I don't expect I never get too much from YouTube, anything. But yep, got one watching on YouTube. How are you, whoever you are? How are you? I would tell you, click on it. We left a link for you, my YouTube watcher. There's a link in the description for the Rumble channel. Come join where the real talk goes on. I watch all these guys now. The Kim Iversons of the world, even Bongino's and I'm forgetting the other guy's name now. The comedian dude, beard, British. Anyway, they're all doing their shows, and I don't have the capability to do this with the streaming software that I use, but they'll do their shows for like the first 15 minutes and then tell everybody on YouTube, we're out. The real talk is about to begin. And then they go, and I got to tell you, like there was some liberation there for a while when I wasn't on YouTube, where I'm not necessarily overly thinking everything that I say and have to keep giving disclaimers mid-show and whatever, because I don't know what doo-doo kid is going to friggin' see it and go, oh, that violated policy 4054.6. That's right. Yes, it did. Got to strike them. And then they take me down again. And I can't say anything. I can't tell anyone. I can't communicate. We built it up to about 1,500 followers or subscribers on YouTube, and then that was it. Then the distribution ended. Same thing on Facebook. We got just below 16,000, and all of a sudden everything just started getting restricted. So I slowed down with the videos a little bit, because with the produced videos, obviously I'm still coming on for Wednesday Night Live. That's like my staple to keep the channel going. And I like to engage with you folks. But at the same time, like when it comes to doing the regular produced videos, like they're very time consuming. I have a full-time job. If Facebook is going to just let two people see it, I had one video. You could look, if you go down our list in Facebook, it's actually funny. You'll see like videos that were like 65,000 views, 75,000. I mean, we were doing 2,000 to 3,000 followers a week. And then eventually, like we triggered some alarm somewhere, like, hey, we don't like this guy. They're doing that convention of states thing, talking about Klaus, and they're talking about, Xi Jinping. We need to slow this boy down. and then boom, all of a sudden you'll see the videos just drop off a cliff, and then it goes down to just the live videos, which is where I'm at now. So, but I will start eventually producing more videos to put out. I'm just kind of letting things simmer down on the Facebook front for a while, just because I don't really know what, I used to let it go for 2-3 days and then come back and boom, it would hit again. But like, it's been like a month now. So I don't know if I'm on some like permanent poo-poo list, but like it is definitely frustrating. All right, let me see here. So we have to make our education system private and not buy this cool course from another country for our kids to learn. Yeah, I'm not sure which cool course that is, but we definitely should be, even if we're not privatizing the education system, I think the voucher system is the way to go, because parents will know, parents know where they want to send their kids. And I think when it's left, no one should be making that decision but parents. Like telling them you live here, you're zoned here, you have to go here, and here sucks. Well, why, because I picked this house, does my kid have to not get educated? Or do I have to battle, unindoctrinating him every time he comes home? Like, what the hell? Because what you find when you give parents the choice is that they're going to take their vouchers and they're all going to put them into the same schools. And then the ones that suck will disappear. Or at least everybody in them will be terminated because they sucked. And then they can be replaced. And that school can then take on the model of the school that everyone's given their voucher money to. I mean, it's really a no-brainer. When you do things on merit, it's a no-brainer. But we don't do things on merit anymore. We do things on equity, right? Another commie message that's friggin' people have adapted as if it's normal. It's not normal. It is not normal. All right? Diversity, not a good message. Yeah, I said it. Unity, that's a good message. Unity's a good message. Diversity says just that, division. And that's the goal. It's a part of the whole. This is what Yuri explains when he talks about ideological subversion. It's about dividing. And there's nothing they've done better than to put everybody in their box. And there's nothing that I love to see more than to see someone wake up from that box, rip it open, and run the hell out. Because that's what needs to happen. So there's a question here. How do you think we can keep the U.S. dollar as the world currency? I'll take you right back, Cool Life. I'll take you to Convention of States. So if you're not convinced, if you don't know what the current movement is for, there are 3 topics of amendments. 19 states have already passed resolutions. We need 34. The 3 topics are term limits for all government officials, not just the elected, everybody, deep state, the whole 9. If you're a government official, appointed or otherwise, you got limits. All right. So that's one. The second one, though, is where this comes in, is fiscal restraints. So when the convention's called, they're going to sit down and they're going to be discussing different types of fiscal restraint amendments. Number 1, which I'm positive will pass, will be a balanced budget amendment. All right. And the balanced budget amendment will force the federal government to have to balance the budget under penalty. All right. And now, what does that mean? How does that impact? Now, I'm hoping they go further with the fiscal restraints. I'm hoping they overturn the 16th Amendment, is what I'm hoping for. But we'll see. I'll take the balanced budget amendment, because it's going to be hard to just bring it back to prevalence. But what will happen, all right? Because even if China's currency is 100% backed by gold, which it won't be, but even if it's 100% backed by gold, these other countries don't want to be aligning with China. Nobody wants to. They'll do it if they think that's where if that's where it's all headed. But if you think Saudi Arabia is like eager to walk away from the US dollar to jump onto the yuan, you're crazy. Nobody wants the dominant currency to be run by a dictator. This is what made the US currency so prevalent, was that everyone had a level of comfort that it was a republic, like a true republic. That there were no dictators. There were corrupt people, but there were no dictators. There were no Xi Jinpings. It's a big deal. If the United States went, let's say, 2 full years of operating under a balanced budget where we don't spend more than, and then yeah, there's going to have to be austerity measures. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. We'll be shutting down the Department of Education. We'll be shutting down most of these. So the third one, by the way, are amendments on government overreach, and that would address the regulatory agencies where we're going to save a ton of money. And all of that authority goes back to the states. All of it. So in the end, back to my point about balanced budget, if they balance the budget, if that debt clock just, it doesn't even have to reverse, if it just stopped. It's never stopped, ever. But if it did, if that debt clock stopped, the United States dollar would immediately take control of world currency. It would be almost instantaneous. The only way, there may be a little delay in it as people wait to see if this is for real. But if we do move in a positive direction to paying off our debt, then yes, absolutely the world will come back to the United States dollar. And it won't matter petrol or no petrol. It won't even make a difference. If our dollar has its own, because we won't need it, if we're fiscally responsible, we won't need to put our dollar on a commodity. Now we should put our dollar on a commodity. There's no doubt about that. But this whole game, that the Fed plays with, well, we're going to raise rates, lower rates, raise rates, lower rates, raise rates. It's just nonsense. So with Saudi Arabia, they want American military protection. So I think we offer it, but in return, they have to use the U.S. dollar. Yeah, they want American military protection, but clearly that's not the case now because they're looking at the yuan seriously now. So yeah, do they want U.S. protection? Kind of, but at the same time, people are getting freaked out by the U.S. The United States has abused our role in being the dominant currency. This whole sanctions thing, for self-proclaimed righteousness, whether it's a good cause or not a good cause, this is not how to go about handling world affairs, by just placing sanctions on people. And frankly, they were ready for us to do these sanctions. Russia has been completely unaffected by these sanctions, completely unaffected. And people say, oh, well, China's buying all this gold so that they can get, they can go to a gold standard. China has no interest in going to a gold standard. I don't know what part of complete control of currency people don't understand, but they are not going to a gold standard. The gold that they're hoarding is protection against U.S. sanctions. Period. That's it. Because what's going to happen if they decide to go into Taiwan? We're going to think we have some power to sanction. And we'll do it, and no one will care. Which is exactly what happened in Russia. They've pulled the teeth out of that wolf. The sanctions are meaningless now. They're meaningless. And frankly, other countries are more likely to join BRICS because of our inability to stop sanctioning people. Because nobody likes the idea of one nation having that kind of power. The irony of it is that they're going to give that kind of power to they're going to give that kind of power to Xi Jinping. That's the madness of it. So over in Rumble, we got a comment. Fear tactics. It's Robbie Gav. So he says fear tactics is exactly what they're doing with Trump's indictment. They're showing upcoming politicians to not step out of line. Yeah, and there's a part of that for sure. I mean, they're definitely, the government's been weaponized, right? And I think that's something we all have to just stop and acknowledge. The government has been weaponized. And we know this, right? We know it. When the irony of Trump's indictment is that they're trying to make the case that these are felonies, not misdemeanors. All right, this misappropriation of funds. Now, their basis for doing that, the reason they're doing it first is so that they can get the statute of limitations raised from 2 years to 5 years, so then they can even have this conversation. But then on top of that, they turn around and say the reason why it's going to be that, the reason why they should be a felony is because it defrauded the American voter. It held back information that could have affected the election and therefore defrauded the voter. And I'm just, how do you say that with a straight face, knowing that the FBI and intelligence agencies were actively knocking down the Hunter Biden laptop story, which we all know, and you could bet your bottom they knew was 100% legit. So there's no question that the government has been weaponized. So it's, Mike Arnold, how are you, sir? How are you? Welcome aboard. You should check out the intro if you haven't seen it, guys. I did a 10-minute ticker today to line in, and I used some clips from the Epoch Times documentary, The Final War. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's the 100-year plan to destroy America, and it's basically going through the Chinese Communist Party's 100-year declaration back in 1949 when they first formed. And the stuff that they pull out in that documentary is just absolutely amazing. Joshua Phillip, another phenomenal job. I cannot recommend his documentaries enough. And I used Joshua Phillip when I did that one piece about journalism not being dead. We just don't know where to find the journalists. And so, I talked about Michael Yohn. I talked about Andy Ngo, who does a lot of work on Antifa investigative reporting. Lara Logan, who's very big on the sex trafficking issues going on right now, and other things, right? She's very much knee deep in the whole cabal piece and the border situation. And then Joshua Phillip at the Epoch Times, who did the documentary on the Wuhan lab leak, a fully well-produced documentary that released in early April 2020, like right after the pandemic started, was all over it. Got his documentary thrown off of friggin' Facebook, off of YouTube. Then they brought it back. They let it come back. But yeah, Epoch Times is absolutely, if you're looking for, we all said we're confused. We don't know where to go for information, this and that. Epoch Times is a valid source of investigative journalism. They do a phenomenal job. They're not the only ones out there who do a good job, but they're one of the best, without a doubt. And when it comes to the CCP, they are head and shoulders above everybody else. Head and shoulders. So, but I'm happy that we at least got a comment out of Rumble, man. I love you guys over there in Rumble, but I'll see 8 or 10 people watching, and there's just no comments. I'm just like, so the point, so everyone knows, of these Wednesday night lives is to engage, right? So I have plenty to say, so you don't got to worry about me running out of stuff to say. But at the same time, the idea is, number one, if there's ever a question about anything on Article 5 or Convention of States, you can bring it up at any time during any broadcast that I am on, and I will stop the horses and and address your question, because to me, that is the most important thing in the world right now. That being said, if you have comments or you want to make a statement about something, I absolutely will respond to it. Get your stuff up here live. If we start getting more comments in Rumble, I'll start showing Rumbles. I'll pull my screen up for Rumble, and we can do it that way, at least until Rumble starts integrating with somebody. They're a little behind. They're a little behind. And Mike says, I'm not able to find you live on Rumble. Well, that's disappointing. I do have, I'm looking at it now. There are 8 people watching now. So I don't know. And I got a comment here. So I am there. I'm not sure why. Now make sure it's the Patriot Think Tank. So you should be able to, it's www.rumble.com/C/Patriot Think Tank, not the Patriot Think Tank, just Patriot Think Tank. Rumble cut off the. I don't know what that was all about, but that was. But we're definitely on there. Definitely people watching. So we need to get our businesses out of China. Yeah. Well, and that's I think they're starting to get the message now. I think businesses, look, the desire to earn, right, is inherent in corporations. Like they're going, the problem with it is they need to self-regulate better than they do, and they should have known that going to China would have been a bad idea in the first place. But maybe they really were duped the same way these presidents were over the years, who kept thinking that China is coming with an olive branch. They want to be, they want a free country. Like now, if they don't understand now, and that's really what the gist of this documentary was just kind of showing people that, like, the mantra is hide your strength and bide your time. And that's what they've been doing this entire time. So, and then Cool Life says, I found you on Rumble. Awesome. Awesome. Make sure you subscribe, Cool Life. We're trying to grow the Rumble base now. I'd like to get to a point where I can just ditch, get on Rumble. I mean, I probably won't. We got 16,000 followers on Facebook. I'll probably hang around Facebook, but like YouTube has just put the clamps on me, and I don't even know how to deal with YouTube anymore. I don't. I'm just like, I'm kind of over it. And it's crazy because we wasted the first year and a half, and I've only been around for some 2 years now. And we wasted a year and a half, and that completely focused on YouTube. And so, and for nothing, to like, for them to just, haze us and keep dinging us. I mean, I must have been suspended now 5-6 times in that year and a half on YouTube. I've never been suspended anywhere else. I've never even got slapped on the wrist anywhere else, although Facebook did decide, Facebook does things a little differently. So they did slap the shadow ban on Rumble. Like we do a live broadcast, and I will get, I'll get 10 or 15 freaking 10 or 15 viewers on YouTube total, like, that popped in and out throughout a broadcast. So it's like one at any given point in time. And then Rumble, when it ends, like when the video's over, and then Rumble takes some time to process it, and then it pops up again, there's like 200 something views that went on throughout, the hour or hour and a half or whatever it may be. So, but yeah, he says that's happening to everyone on YouTube. Yeah, it is. And that's the thing, is that's why these other channels are starting to do, and I might have to switch software. I may have to move over to Streamlabs or something, because I've been using this web-based software because it's fairly easy, and it's really easy to just set up the streams and do all that. And it's just, sometimes I'm rushing home and I gotta quickly get it together and get on. So I've been using it, but it does limit me in my capabilities. I think with the other softwares, I can like do the 15 minutes on YouTube and then just kick off to Rumble and then be able to like speak freely. And so that's, and it's a shame. It's a shame, that Google is so owned by these folks, but there's really not a lot. There's not a lot that I can do about it at this point. So I'm just kind of rolling with the flow, and But I did sell some T-shirts this week. This one is the hot one right now. Yuri was right. So you guys can purchase T-shirts, and almost anything I wear on the show is available on my Etsy store. There's about 6 different items there, 6 or 7 different items. Play offense. Once you see, you cannot unsee. There's stuff like that. But you can definitely support the channel by purchasing cool gear. Let me see if I have another. So this one YouTube channel I occasionally watch called China Uncensored. I highly recommend for anyone that wants up-to-date information with what's going on. I never see them in my recommendations anymore. Yeah, you're never going to see that in your recommendations. What are you, crazy? When I did a piece about Xi Jinping hoarding gold, or when they just recently, was it third quarter of last year, they had this mystery buyer of gold. They knew it was a central bank. They didn't know who. China comes out and says it's us. I'm like, all right. So number one, China never comes out and says it's us unless there's a reason. They don't have to. And number two, they have far more gold than what they said that they had. So, but I did a whole piece on it explaining all that, and that video just fell off a cliff. Like it just over time. I shouldn't say that. Over time, it started to pick up some momentum, but when it first got put out, like nobody, like no network except Rumble. Rumble doesn't care. Rumble just puts it out in the ether, and whatever happens, happens. But again, we only have like 550 followers on Rumble, so or 580, I think now. So it's growing, but it is limited. So we're trying to get that base up so that we can start to make that migration, because I've already mentally turned off to YouTube altogether. I don't come on to waste my time. If I had to work against the platform, if it's like a battle between me and the platform, I don't have patience for that. So on that note, it is what it is. But look, I hope you guys enjoyed the intro. It should be enough of a teaser. I mean, it's a 10-minute ticker, but it's a 2-hour documentary. So, it's really an in-depth growth of China and their attitudes towards the United States, and the fact that this has started in 1948 really is when they started talking about it. 49 is when they knocked out the nationalists in China and started to begin to implement it, and they do a very good job of getting into it through it all. It goes into their relationship with the Soviets, why they came with an olive branch to America so that we could protect them from the Soviets. And I mean, it really does do a very detailed walk up all the way through. And it's on Epoch TV, on epochtimes.com. You might be able to get it without subscribing if you go, like I pulled it up on Amazon and I didn't even have to log into the app or anything. And it was in there. The Epic TV app was in there. I opened it. There are a bunch of documentaries in there, and buried amongst all the documentaries was The Final War with Joshua Phillips. So you may be able to get it. My brother tried to do it with Roku, and he didn't see it. But with the Amazon Fire Stick, I did. But I would tell you, just go ahead and subscribe. That's a news organization. For all the garbage we spend money on today, that's an organization that you should openly be trying to get onto, because when you hear something from there, that they vetted it. They're not the group of doo-doo-doos like these people where someone makes up a story and then goes nationwide news and only to find out he was full of crap, right? So and those types of news organizations these days are precious. So and we should all view them that way. But so if you haven't done it already, sign the petition. You can find it at www.thepatriotthinktank.com/petition. That will have a letter generated to the local representative in your area. All right. You will also see a button to click to volunteer. Click the button. All right. A district captain local to you will reach out and let you know what can be done, what skill sets you have that you might be able to contribute, where they're at with their particular resolutions, and kind of keep you in the loop with ongoing events and things of that nature. So this is a way, folks, for us to get together and do something, right? This is a way for us to stop, Trump's getting indicted. We're angry. The CCP ruined our education system. We're angry. They're spending too much money. We're angry, right? We're always angry. We're always angry and we're always scared, but we're not taking enough action. And elections are not going to fix the gigantic problems that we have. So, before I cut out, I'm just going to say that make sure, if you don't know much about Article 5, join us on Wednesdays, all right? And then bring your questions. So spend the week, look up some stuff. I'll give you the negative places to go. You could go to John Birch Society. They're going to bash Article 5 all day. Bunch of commies over there. And then at the same time, go to College University from Convention of States and get both sides of it. Listen to all the fear mongering and the hate, and then listen to the historical accuracy, in my opinion. And you're going to see, if you're a good researcher and you don't just take what's fed to you, when you see someone use a quote, and this goes for anything, if you ever see someone using a quote, especially if it's from a founding father, go and look that quote up in context. Because that's the tactic that John Birch Society uses, is they take founders' quotes out of context and bastardize them. But I want you to listen to both sides, because I know that the truth is on my side. So in the end, when you hear both sides, I'm 100% confident that you will understand you're being duped. You're being fear-mongered out of using your constitutional power. And once you realize how powerful this process is, you will realize that it is the only way. No Superman, folks. It ain't happening. I don't care, Trump, DeSantis, whoever. That's great. Get them in. That's awesome. They ain't saving the country. They can stop the bleeding. The only ones that are going to save the country is us. It's us. And I would very much like to see, these. And I know DeSantis is all about it. DeSantis openly spoke about the calling of a convention of states. He openly said that we should be calling for a convention of states. I don't think I have the clip of him here, but if I do, it's definitely worth playing. But I don't think I have it ready, not on board and uploaded. So we'll have to wait on that. But Antonin Scalia spoke in favor of it. It is the way, folks. It is the path. It is the path. And my existence on this channel, despite the shadow banning and whatever else, my existence here is to get that message over to you, to help explain to you how these dootadoos poisoned our country and how we get it back. Right? Those are the two things that really matter. Really, the one thing that really matters is how we get it back, because we already lost the first phase. So now it's time for phase two. This is where we start throwing blows instead of standing there like a freaking punching bag while these freaking dootadoos all end up freaking passing ridiculous laws and doing other nonsense. I'm voting for DeSantis unless someone really changes my mind about someone else. I was all about DeSantis too, and I still absolutely love DeSantis. I'm just so angry over the indictment. And it's funny because my brother told me that people were going to get so mad about this indictment that Trump's polls have skyrocketed. And I got to tell you, I was laughing to myself when I felt that way. I was like, you know what? I really do feel like we need to get this guy in office and have DeSantis. What I would love to see at this point is DeSantis run on a ticket with Trump. I know everybody would love to see this. DeSantis run on a ticket with Trump, and then get that 4 years out of Trump, and then let DeSantis ride in for the next two terms, and get 12 years out of this instead of 4. So I mean, but in the end, this indictment did rub me the wrong way, and I am now. We'll see. DeSantis might not even run. Honestly, he's going to do his internal polling. They'll tell him. They'll tell him honestly, this is the time to do it, or it's not the time to do it. But he's not going to run just for the sake of running. If he doesn't think, if his polling internally is not telling him he can win, and right now, I think that polling might change a little bit with the fact that this indictment went down. He may decide to just not run, and we'll see how it pans out. But I think that's. So I said, I'm not going to vote for Trump for the indictment. Just tells me to vote for Republican. Yeah, I know the indictment. So here's the reason why I say the indictment is because two things. And if you guys weren't, if folks weren't on earlier, number one, clearly they're still afraid of the election. So this would not be happening. So to those who think the election is done, they own it, they this and that, whatever, the mail-in voting and everything, you know what? They wouldn't be going through all this if they thought they had the election wrapped up. So they are definitely still sweating the election. So that's one good thing that we got to learn from this process. And the other point is this: if they hate this man this much, because they're not going after everyone else this way, they're going after Trump only, and they're going after him so relentlessly with no charge. They have nothing. They have nothing this time. And they're going after him again. If they were, there's no way they're getting this bumped up to felonies. And if they don't get him bumped up to felonies, then he walks, because the statute of limitation is 2 years. So this is an incredibly huge risk they're taking. It's completely unprecedented. DAs don't do this unless they're paid for by Soros. If George Soros hates somebody this much, then look. There's a certain level of satisfaction for me that would come in with Trump being able to just give that stupid smirk and just show all these coconuts up. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how this grand jury plays out. We'll see how the indictments play out. We'll see how DeSantis plays out. DeSantis might not even run. So, and there's nobody else in the field that can win. So in the end, the only two people in the field that can win the general are going to be DeSantis and Trump. So if DeSantis doesn't run, then it's a no-brainer. And I might be just as well if he didn't. But, you know, in the end, let him make that decision, and we'll move on from there. All right, so folks, I see there's still about 10 or 11 people on Rumble. I do appreciate you folks very much. So please take the moment to subscribe before you go. We are trying to grow. We will be putting out some additional pre-produced videos. Like, it won't all be live. We'll be doing some pre-produced videos again, but I'm trying to get the Rumble base up so that it's at least there's people watching, right? Because Facebook and YouTube are just they're just not, they don't love me as much as I think they should. I think there should be some more love in the room than there is with those guys. So, and then update on my West Virginia property. So we're still trying to close that down. There are some issues with easements to the property. So a lot of stuff in West Virginia gets done spit in a handshake. So since I'm not really a spit in a handshake kind of guy when it comes to major purchases, we're waiting to get this one thing ironed out. But I will keep you guys in the loop as to how that whole thing goes, the progress of it as things come. You know, I took some video. I might even show that one day. But we're very excited about getting this West Virginia property going. We got 68 acres out there, and it's and we're fired up about it. So, you know, again, I'll keep you guys in the loop with all that. And then until then, we'll see you next week. I may jump on this weekend, just depending on what stories break and what happens. But other than that, folks, I will guaranteed be on every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. That's Pacific time, right? So to all my East Coast folks, then, you know, make sure you're looking out for us on at 8:30 p.m. And throughout the week, feel free to message the channel, message to the Patriot Think Tank directly. I do respond to those. I'm not immediate unless I happen to be right on my phone at that moment, but like, we do get a lot of messages. So just, you know, throw it in there. Give me your question, give me your comment, and I'll try and help you with the best I can with what answers I have. All right, folks, until next time, I'm out.
And like that,